Thank you, Stephen. It's a pleasure to introduce Upai Jasa, who is a Lahu person from Thailand. And he has been working with his community for many years. In fact, he is the one of the two main people who was involved in the translation of the New Testament into Lahu Si. And today, Upai will be talking about the pronouns and demonstrative system of the Lahu Si language, which is the topic of his thesis. So Upai, over to you. Please share your screen, and I will mute myself now.
All right, give me a sec.
We see your screen.
Can you see it now? Can you see my screen now?
We can
see your screen.
All right, great. So since I'm sharing my time with my friend Vong, and I'm only having 25 to 30 minutes, so let us dive in. So the topic today is pronouns and deictic demonstratives in Lahu Si Balan. But before we are looking at two of them in details, I'm going to walk you through the overview background information on the people group, their language, and its linguistic structure that will be helpful for you to follow examples from the text that I will use in my talk today. Lahu Si Balan is a group within the Lahu Si or Yellow Lahu subdivision of Lahu. The Balan live in Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, and the USA. In Myanmar, they live in Keng Tung area of Shan State and up in the northeastern part of the country. And in Thailand, they spread across provinces in the north of the country, with a majority of them in Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai. In Laos, they're in Hoi Sai area of Bo Kaeo province, which is across from Chiang Rai province of Thailand on the other side of the Mekong River. In the USA, they're in the state of California, North Carolina, and Minnesota. So the estimate total population of this people group is about 200,000. I try to get estimate figure of the people group in each of the countries, but what I have found from my experiences is that you ask different people and different people have their own number on the people group. And that's primarily because there has never been any official survey done on the number of the people group in those countries. So here is the map of the country in mainland Southeast Asia here. So in Thailand, they are here up, in the North Chang, they spread across all the provinces here. And in Myanmar, they live around here. And in Laos, they're here, which is across from Chiang Rai, as I said before. And this is a close-up map of Thailand. So you can find Balan people all the way here in the north. The majority of them are in Chiang Rai and Chiang Mai, as I already said. And you can find some in Lampang province here and in Ta Kamphaeng Phet. The furthest south that they are is in Phetchabun, but there are only a few number of Balan there in Phetchabun. The language, Balan is a central Mui language of the Tibeto-Burman, and there under Lahu, there are two groups which are Lahuna and Lahu Si. Lahuna or Black Lahu, Lahu Si or Yellow Lahu. And the Lahu Si is the smaller group and Balan is in this group. Balan itself is the most distinctive dialect from Lahuna compared to all other Lahu dialects, including the dialects within the Lahu Si group. And note that Lahuna or Black Lahu is the LWC among the Lahus. The language is an SOV like many other Tibeto-Burman languages. The orthography that I use in this study is developed by the Balan community in Thailand and with the help of SIL. It's a Romanized base script, so they use a Romanized character to write consonant, vowel, and tone. Unlike Lahuna, they use diacritic symbol to mark tones. Lahu Si use consonants. And because words in Lahu Si are open syllable, so when you see the final consonant on the word, that tell you what tones the word is, and you don't pronounce that consonant. There are 22 consonants, 8 vowels, and 7 tones in the language. And the language has a very basic consonant structure and no consonant cluster. There are 2 distinct syllable shapes, CVT and VT, and all vowels occur in a single vowel syllable types. Vowel sequence occurs only at the morpheme boundaries where the following morpheme is a bound morpheme, but you don't find that many in the language. There are very few in the language. So here in our first table, I have a consonant chart here. There are 22 consonants, and on the left column are places of articulation and with its orthographic representation on the right column. So that's how they write the sound in the consonant sound in the language. And the second chart here are vowels. We have 8 vowels here, and again on the left column are places of articulation, and on the right columns is how they write these vowels in their writing system. And our third chart here are tones. There are 7 tones, and if you look at the tones, 3 of those tones have allophones. So you have high, mid, low, rising, falling, extra high stop, and then mid stop. So a note in the middle column there, that's how they write tones. And I also have set example words on the right column, and I'm going to show you how the tone sounds. I'm going to read from the top to the bottom. So their tone sounds like this: ma, 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 ma. Clauses, Balan clauses are either a non-final or final clause, and both a non-final and final clause is marked by a particle that tell you that that it is either a non-final clause or final clause. A final clause is always at the end of the sentence, and a clause can be embedded inside a noun phrase either by a nominalization or relativization. If a clause ends with a verbal particle that functions as a nominalizer, then it is nominalized and become the head noun of a noun phrase is embedded in. But if it ends with a verbal particle that functions as a relative marker, then the whole clause becomes a relative clause, modifying the head noun of a noun phrase is embedded in. So here in the first example, I have a nominalized noun. The clause yapo, she gives birth in the context there is nominalized by the particle ki, a locative nominalizer, and then it becomes a noun phrase, a birthing location. So here you have, because the female dog was pregnant together, they went and looked for a place to give birth. So yapo is nominalized by ki and become a place to give birth. Example 2 shows a relative clause. So a clause yo asa who she sustains her own life. In the context is relativized by the verbal particle to purposive relative marker, and it becomes a clause that modifies the head noun through money. So yo asa who to prove money to sustain her life. Yo asa who to prove hele yo we asa kape yo tang chioma. She offered all her life and the money used for sustaining her life. Now moving up to sentences. There are 3 types of sentences in Balan: simple, compound, and complex. A simple sentence contains only a single clause. A compound sentence has at least one non-final clause prior to a final clause, and the clause is not embedded in another clause. However, a complex sentence, so in a compound sentence, you can have any embedded clause in a non-final clause, but in a complex sentence, at least one embedded clause or a relative clause is required in a non-final clause for the sentence to be qualified as a complex sentence. You may have multiple non-final clauses, but you must have at least one embedded clause. Example 3 here shows a simple sentence. And he went to stay with other people. Example 4 here shows a compound sentence. Here we have a non-final clause that is marked by a non-final clause particle le, which also functions as a linker to a final clause. So we have, and the principal loved him very much and really pitied him. Example 5 here is a complex sentence in the language. So here we have a relative clause in a non-final clause. So the clause popedo la che, he had put the turtle inside is relativized by the verbal particle che, and then it becomes a relative clause that modify the head noun la sa handbag. So the noun phrase is the handbag that he had put the turtle inside. Ketele sa bo va uve popedo la che la sa gu la hale chikano che kano ga bo ve che yao. Now moving on to some information on my research. My ongoing research is on cohesion in Lahu Si Balan discourse. The framework that I use for my cohesion analysis is developed based on the original work and the subsequent works of Halliday and Hassan, model of cohesion analysis as listed here on the slide. And apart from their work, I also look at other relevant literature on the same topic and also on discourse analysis in general. And some of them are listed here from Brown and Yule, Partridge, Martin, and Longacre. On the Lahu and Lahu Si Balan side, I looked at Lahu dialect from Bradley and of course from Matisov, the grammar of Lahu, and the rest is the work that is done by the faculty members and MA students at Payap University, and some of them that are here are from Cooper on the phonological analysis and orthography development on the Balan. So talking about methodology, the data that I use 4 types of data, including folktales, first-person narrative, sermons, and conversations. I collected all the data by myself. Folktales I collected prior to my arrival at La Trobe, and that was before 2018. And the rest I collected in 2019 from native Lahu Si Balan speakers living in the provinces in the north of Thailand. And my informants include 6 male and 4 females, all above 40 years of age. I transcribed data and analyzed myself, and in the end, I revised and refined it with the help of the Balan consultants in Thailand and in the States. Now, let us move on to the real topic of today. So we are going to begin with pronouns first. There are 13 pronouns in the language system, and they are all divided into 3 categories. And you have 5 members in the first person group, and then 3 in the second person, and 5 in the third person pronoun. Balan pronouns do not show gender animacy and inanimacy or honorifics, but they do distinguish person, number, inclusivity, and exclusivity. Here in the first chart, we have 5 of the first person pronoun. So you have singular, 2 dual, and 2 plural. Nga, ona, jona, ngania, ngahe, ani. And the second chart here are our second person pronoun. No, nima, nihe. And the third chart here is our the first group, our third person pronouns. So you have 1 singular, 1 dual, and 1 plural. Yo, ima, ihe. And the last table here is a generic third person pronoun, su, asu. Unlike English, Balan pronouns do not change their form based on the grammatical function in the clause, but the language use a marking system on the pronoun to indicate its function in the clause. So here in my 2 examples, that they use noun phrase, final postposition, and possessive marker. In my first example here, you have an object marker on the third person singular pronoun yo. Nga yo ha na ngo che yao. I asked him and her, and in the second sentence here, I have a possessive marker ve right after a possessor and before a possessee. So we have ihe ve ye that ja che yao. Their house is very beautiful. In person reference, as a cohesive device, almost all of the Balan pronoun, I think 12 out of 13 I employ as anaphoric reference, except one pronoun, which is the generic third person pronoun, su, which is only used as either cataphoric or exophoric reference. I haven't found any instance that it is used as anaphoric reference. Example 6 here shows su others as cataphoric reference. Here, its reference, Achuya government immediately follows the pronoun. So you have Miki will call Asukachilolo. There was a tree farming in that place. Asukale Asuwe or you know, Su Achuya Bichio. People there farmed trees, and as for the seedlings, the government gave them to them. Now, moving on to the next example here, we have Su others use as exophoric reference, referring to something outside of the text. Note that for cohesion, exophoric reference usually doesn't contribute cohesion to the text. And for the context here, in the example that I used, the speaker talked about his civet hunting trip at night. You know, he went and hunted civet that came to feed on the wild berries, and while preparing the ground for his bed on the night, he stumbled upon a log, and then he thought to himself, oh, it must be a log that someone else, you know, had chopped down that had been there before him. So you have ketele ma ngaki or ga ngwa me ztene tea pagu ke here they check pagu ke here they check law, and I fell around the bottom of where I was, and there was a small log falling on the ground. Su tall la law, others had chopped it down. So others is not mentioned prior to the text, and the following text he didn't mention about who the person is. Now, moving on to demonstratives, all the demonstratives that I'm going to look at today are all categorized into a nominal group. Based on their functions, they are grouped into classes of pronouns, determiners, manner, and locative demonstratives. All demonstrative in each group, except those in a special category, are based on proximity to a speaker, but those in the special category are based on proximity to both a speaker and an addressee. So here in the first table here, we have pronouns and determiners, and you have 3 categories: proximal, distal, and the special category here. Note that for some member of some categories, you have more than there are variation, you know, for certain member of the categories, and those that I marked with an asterisk means that they only occur once or twice in my entire text corpus. And whenever they occur, they are used for the exact same meaning and in the exact context as the one that is not marked. So I conclude that they're the same one. So you can use either one, any one of them interchangeably for the same meaning. In a referential use, both Balan demonstrative pronouns and determiners are primarily and exclusively employed as anaphoric reference. And again, you know, I talk about the variation of forms, and any form can be used interchangeably as long as it carries, as long as it is used for the same meaning. And as a pronoun, the demonstrative functions just like nouns and occurs in the spots where nouns do. So in example 8 here, we have uve, that one, as a pronoun in the object position, referring back to the 2 things that the rich cares most when they make an offering, and that is that he is recognized and that he would not lose face. So those things refer to the 2 things there in the italic. And the next example here, we have Ive, that one closer to you, but far from me. Here it is used as anaphoric reference, and it refers to the chairs that speaker mentioned in the first sentence when he talked about the chairs that he went and bought. And speaker T said, oh, those are closer to you that you have kept, right? Now moving on to determiners. As a determiner which modifies a noun, Balan demonstrative almost always occur after a noun or a proper noun. They never occur with any pronouns. If occurring before a noun or a proper noun, which is very rare, it is often immediately followed by either a numeral plus a classifier or just a classifier of the referent. Rarely is it immediately followed by a noun or a proper noun. So here in example 10, we have chive. This after the noun, it modifies maxima widow. The widow is first mentioned in the first example, the first sentence here in our example, and then it's mentioned again in the third example with the determiner chive, and it points back to the same widow in the first sentence. Here we have nimo temo maxima tega chochia. The second group was a widow. Maxima chive vo hayago ya otang te choi macho piche otang pechiao. This widow was a symbol of the poor, those who did not have anything. And in the next example, we have the determiner uve that, which occurred before a noun. It modified tega. Note that tega is a numeral plus classifier. So in this example, so before the first example, the speaker talked about 3 of his children. So he talked about each one of them in sequence. And now he talks about his second one. So the head noun is null here because it's well understood. So he retained only the numeral plus classifier here. And then he talked about this second child again in the second sentence. And this time he used the determiner in front of the numeral plus classifier there. So you have tega or mocholo hele jolo yelamalo presenta tele amekwa chechio. As for another one, he studies at Chiang Mai University and has gone to a conference in Germany and is now returning home. Uve tegao ache, kaivi law, that one does go quite far. Now moving on to manner demonstratives. Here we have 3 categories, again, proximal, distal, and special category. And their variation for the member of each category too. Again, the one that masked by asterisk only occur once or twice in my entire text corpus. So you have chike, chike, uke, 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 ike, ike. As a manner demonstrative, though part of the noun phrase, this demonstrative seems to be semantically directed towards the verb phrase of the sentence, especially when the verb is a verb of action. So you may translate their meaning as a manner adverbial. For example, yo chikete na chiyo, he was sick like this. And nga ukeko chiyo, I spoke like this. And this also corresponds to their counterparts in Lahu Na or Black Lahu, chike like this and okay like that, as described in Matisov. And according to Matisov, these manner demonstratives, including stem, ke in Balan and ke in Lahu Na, are an adverbial extension of the noun the NP, namely the ke or ke class. And their position in the clause is after the noun, which is the subject of the clause, and always before the verb. In connective narratives, where the subject is well understood and known, the manner demonstratives always occur before the verb. And in such case, the expression manner demonstrative followed by a verb are often used to begin new sentences. Like demonstrative pronouns and determiners, I already said that there are multiple forms, so any form can be used interchangeably for the same meaning. And these manner demonstrative can be employed as either anaphoric or cataphoric reference. In example 12 here, we have the manner demonstrative uke, like that. It's used as anaphoric reference, and it talks about, teaching songs to little children in the first sentence. So we have here, at night we taught songs to little children. Doing like that, teaching songs, we made friendship. And in the next example, we have a manner demonstrative chike, like this, as a cataphoric reference pointing forward to what the village headman is going to say in the second sentence, that the water buffalo calf was male, so it was his. So you have ketele kakela chikeko che, and the village headman said like this, nukaya uve opalo ngaveya yao. It is his. Lastly, locative demonstrative. Here we have 4 categories, proximal, and then you have 3 categories for distal. You have distal same level, distal higher, and distal lower. Now, note that the elevation of the entity in question is also comes into play, which one to use. And if you remember the stem of the demonstrative that we have looked at up until now, apart from distal same level, u or u, the rest are different than the stem in other demonstrative that we have looked at. So as a locative, beside the proximity from the speaker, as I mentioned, the elevation of the entity from the speaker also comes to play. And like demonstrative in previous groups, so you have multiple forms, and I looked at all of them again, and they seem to be used. They're used for the same meaning, and there doesn't seem to be any rule that restrict or tell you which form to use in which context. So the speaker has a freedom to choose, and these locative demonstrative can be used in either anaphoric or cataphoric sense. And as cataphoric reference, the referent of the demonstrative always immediately follows the demonstrative. However, as anaphoric reference, here, a locative demonstrative usually, here I'm talking about the structure. As anaphoric reference, a locative demonstrative usually follows the subject of the clause and precedes the verb or object of the verb, depending on which type of the verb it is. If a temporal NP is present after the subject, then it comes after that temporal NP and before the verb or object of the verb. As cataphoric reference, everything is the same except the referent of a locative demonstrative, which follows immediately after the demonstrative and before the verb. And in connected text where the subject NP is null, a locative demonstrative occurs first in the sentence, and the rest of the sentence follow the structure mentioned above. And here in the last example, I have 2 occurrences of a distal higher nalo and 1 proximal here. In the first example, nalo is used as anaphoric reference referring to China. So the speaker talks about his friend in the sentence prior to 2.4 that his friend invited him to China. So here he only used the locative to refer to China. And then in the second sentence here, we have proximal here and nalo up there as cataphoric reference referring to Chiang Mai and Xishuangbanna. So here you have Ketelet, so Jimai ho Japujile Nalo 12 Panna ho Yai Chie. And we took a plane ride from here in Chiang Mai and landed up there in Xishuangbanna. So conclusion on pronouns. We have 13 pronouns in Balan pronoun system, and while they distinguish person, number, inclusivity, exclusivity, they don't show gender animacy, inanimacy, or honorific. Because Balan pronoun don't change their form based on their grammatical function in the clause, so the language uses a marking system on a pronoun to indicate their function. In reference, 12 out of 13 pronouns, are used primarily as anaphoric reference, and only one of them, the generic third-person pronoun su, appear to be used as either cataphoric or exophoric reference only. Now, moving on to demonstratives. All demonstratives are in a nominal group. They're grouped into classes of pronouns, determiners, manner, and locative demonstrative based on their function. There are multiple forms for members of some categories, and the meaning is unchanged. Any form in each category can be used interchangeably, and all of them are based on proximity to a speaker, except those in the special category that are based on, apart from, proximity to a speaker, the proximity to an addressee is also taken into account. And for locatives, beside the proximity from the speaker, the elevation of the entity from the speaker is also taken into account. And while both demonstrative pronouns and determiners are primarily and exclusively employed as anaphoric reference, locative demonstrative can also be used as cataphoric reference. And that's it for my talk. Any question?
That's quite wonderful. Thank you. And you presented so much information in such a short time. There's a couple of questions that have come up in the chat.
Okay.
Can you see those?
Give me a sec, chat. Is China higher, literally higher elevation, or metaphorical? I think in the context, higher literally because the speaker was in Chiang Mai, right? And the country is up north, so that's the way they interpret it. So China is above us, Chiang Mai. Did I answer correctly?
Yeah. Well,
is that literally? I view it as, I don't know, literally.
there was also a question, James, you had a question about James Walker. Do you want to ask your
Are
question?
the Lahu Si Balan dual pronoun analyzable compound? Let me get back to it. Ima, I don't think so. What's it? I need to, the dual pronoun, right? No, you can wait, give me a sec. The first person dual here, you can't break them, and the second one here, first inclusive, you can, for the inclusive one you can break it, and for exclusive one you can break the word ngania, but when you use it, you don't, even though you can break the compounds, but whenever you use it, you use them together. Is that clear?
Other questions?
More lower authors can any more question?
I'll just ask Rob my question. Well, first I'll make a comment. So I was interested to see the variation in the form of the pronoun.
Yep.
And I don't know if you,
Okay.
I don't know if you have enough examples, but it might be interesting to look at the quantitative distribution of the forms, because it may be the case that you may not be able to make 100% prediction about which form occurs where, but there might be some contextual elements, either linguistic or social, that might indicate which is more likely to occur. I think you answered my question, because when I was looking at the examples of Sue that you provided, it looked like it was functioning as a generic pronoun, and then at the end of the presentation you did call it a generic pronoun, so that kind of answers the question.
Right. Are there all right, so the variation one is the one that gives me quite a headache, because I have to go back and check everything, and to make sure why there is variation. But again, in the end, I reached a conclusion that that's just how they use it. Maybe different people say it differently. Because that's also one of the things they like to say to the Laosi people, that the group that come from Myanmar say, oh, we don't say it like them, you know, those are the way the one from Laos say it. And that's how they usually answer you.
I just had a quick question. It's about the relative marker. You said that this was tu, I think it's pronounced something like that. You said that it also had a purposive function. Does it have any nominalizing functions? Or is it treated as a nominalizer perhaps in example 2, which is on the slide headed, I don't know what number.
Usually if it's a nominalizer, once it's nominalized, it becomes the noun, you know, but here it seems like it's not a separate noun, you know what I mean? But instead it's how should I say it? It modified the head noun. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes. Thank you. Melanie, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Upai, for your very interesting presentation. Just a quick question. You said that the pronouns had special particles that went with them to indicate their grammatical role in a sentence.
The marking, right. Marking,
yeah, are
like,
those same markers used with nouns as well?
So there are nominal particles, verbal particles. There are a lot of, you know, other particles in the language for sure.
So you're not sure then?
No, yeah, there are verbal particle and nominal
there are.
particles apart from, you know, the one I presented it today. I have a whole list of particles that I deal with. Right.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was just wondering whether the particles that you use with the pronouns to indicate whether it's the direct object or the subject or whatever, whether
no, we
those
have
are used with nouns.
In the language we have only one. We have only one object marker, ha.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only one marker.
Okay, and is it only used with pronouns or is it used with nouns as well?
Oh, it's used with noun as well. Oh, that's your question. Yeah, the object marker used with both nouns and pronouns. Yep.
Right.
You can use the object marker with any noun.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that presentation and interesting discussion. I should just mention before introducing Vong that I did receive an email message overnight from Daniel Arisawa, who sends his good wishes to you, Upai, and wishes that he could have attended. So now I'd like to introduce Vong Tsuh Shi, who is a PhD student in our department. She's working on a project to do with Tangsa Wihu song. Vong has been involved in language work in Myanmar for many years with many different languages, and we're very lucky to have her as a PhD student at La Trobe. She's been working not only on the Tangsa Wihu song, but also looking at grammatical description of spoken languages, particularly the Lunki variety of Tangshang, as it's called in Myanmar, and you'll hear something about that shortly. Vong is a member of the Makuri community, and just about 3 years ago, I got a chance to visit her home village and meet her family, and there's a very beautiful location on the Chindwin River in northern Burma. But Vong, I'll hand it over to you now, and if you'd like to unmute yourself and share your screen. Yes, so I can see that. But I can't hear anything yet.
Okay.
Yep, off you go.
Thank you. Today I'm going to share about some preliminary observation of the song that I'm studying. The points I want to share is about the people, location, and the song, and the meaning of this Wihu, and then summaries of the song in Lunki and Dongki, and then the transcription, translation, and interlinearization. And some of the points that I found in differences in orthography, pronunciation, and in grammar, and then few points in spoken versus song language. Many of you have already known about what this Tangshang or Tangsa terms means. They are not actually the cognates. These varieties overlap under these names. The studies show that they have 80 unique linguistic varieties, though their mutual intelligibility degrees are variant. And then these varieties are also classified as Bangwa and non-Bangwa varieties. Wihu song singing is mostly found in Bangwa varieties. This is the place where the people are found, Northeast India and Northwest Myanmar. So, and the meaning Wihu is the name of the benevolent spirit that inspires the singers. And in Lunki, Wihuwa is male singer and Wihunu is female singer. Wihu singers' names are many, and I just mentioned this too. And it is a type of ritual song performed during the New Year's. That's December to January. It can be any day. And it's celebrated about 6 days in their traditional style. It is singing about the Thanksgiving of the for the harvest and the renewal of the fertility, and then the migration of ancestors and the fights between the people. This celebration traditionally is based on family annual festival, and it involves sacrificing of animal rice beer. It is celebrated by visiting neighbors, drinking rice beer, singing and dancing. And this practice of Bangwa, Tangshang culture, like sacrifice, feasting, dancing, singing, was adopted in communal celebration of Naga New Year, usually celebrate on 15th, January 15th, started from 30 years ago. The 6 days are like this. It's preparation day, the first day, and then meat festival day, rest day, and the last day, and taboo day. So these are the days they celebrate. The activities on these days are as mentioned there. But this kind of celebration is rarely found these days. So it's already integrated into communal kind of celebration. So this is the 38th anniversary of New Year celebrated in Khamti 2022. I'd like to give a summary of songs in Lungki and Dongki. Here, the Lungki. It is sang solo and antiphonal. Yes, the styles are different from group to group. And then things starts about the place of the origin, the migration of the story of the ancestors. It goes like this. We come from the end of the horizon because our ancestors bid us to come at this time when the choksi flowers are blooming in the mid of rainy season, at the time when Bada Sigada stopped singing, riding on the back of Sanko fish along the river. We bring the spirit of Betty and Buffalo. This is the tradition we must keep. We come from the lower land as fast as that leopard, with much difficulties, crossing rocky mountains. It takes us 5 days to go around the horizon to our native land, Longki village. Let us go up at once happily. This is the tradition of our forefathers. We will come again next year. The Donghi. Our grandfather and grandmother said this is the time to sing Wihu song, for the design of the prayer basket is completed. For it is the time of picking laurel leaf, for it is the time to make bamboo strips, not to waste the leaf, nor cut the bamboo for nothing. Bamboo grows straight like spear by the cliff, and wild leaf grows like mat in the wetland. They are for 2 sisters to pack rice. It is the time to pick them. The bamboo strips are for binding chicken legs for 2 brothers. The wild leaf is for the 2 sisters to pack rice. The leaves are spotless, the bamboos are matured. We are told to bring rice and buffalo to the villagers who want them. We brought buffalo in the right part and harvested rice from the basket. Have you dug a wallowing pound for buffaloes and cut big paddy fields? Let the buffalo remember the wallowing pound and come, and let the paddy be brought and filled up the big granary. The one who brings them will come to the prayer post and put them into the prayer basket. The baskets are ready, the bridges are built. Next year, this time, we will have the big granary filled with paddy and lay our head on the money box. We will say that it is the time we return. Let us bless the people by sprinkling with rimroll leaf. And then when the transcription are done, it is with the help of the singers and the interpreters right at the field site after the recording take place. And then some of them are done through online communications with local consonants. The people that I worked with are from Moshang Group, Wanlong Mosang, from Shange Group, Kapo Tipo, and Kamlan. From Donghi Group, it's Konyan Sangbak, the singer, and Ponglang, the interpreter. Longki Group is Chem Yung. These are the main people who I worked with. And after that, I would put the transcriptions into Flex for analysis, and I needed to set up each project for each of the language varieties. And in those projects, I had to put a spoken field to compare in order to be able to compare the spoken versus the song. Some of the varieties like Mushang, they already have a dictionary project going on. It was initially done by Kellen, and now it's Professor Stephen is also working on it. But for me, I also have to help with the Lungki spoken dictionary. So for those groups, I don't have to separately focus on spoken varieties. Yeah, the rest of them I had to put in the song language project. And coming to the interpretation of the lexemes, many times I come across ambiguities about the meaning, just as many other predecessors expressed that it is difficult to interpret the songs. So it's the same with the Wihu song. Sometimes they have the same lexeme interpreted in different ways from according to the maybe spoken varieties understanding of the language. Yeah. And then the orthography and the pronunciation of the song language between the varieties. We have differences in orthography. That's one level of difficulty, and then the pronunciation. We see here one single examples in this table. Grandmother, and then the grandmother's name, and grandfather's name. The first line, grandmother, has both vowels differences, and second, in grandmother's name, there is a little difference in the vowel in second syllable of Lungki, and the rest two are the same. And but coming to consonants, the first vowel, the first syllable of this grandmother's name in Donghi has M instead of M. So the difference we can see like that. And so it's the same with the grandfather's and grandfather's name. Not only the differences in the pronunciation, but the tone markings in orthographies are also different in each language. Like Moshang already has a kind of writing system established, and Lungki has begun the working orthography, and they both have differently marked the tones, even though the letters they use are similar, but the representations are represented, what the marking representing are different. And in Donghi, it's an unwritten language, and it's not being analyzed in detail, so I don't have any marking on that. And then grammar differences. I want to look at on the nominalizer. Here, nominalizer in Moshang is realized in both as E and in Lungki. The first one is Lungki example, Ivan, and at the end of the sentence, you see one. Sorry, Ivan and Avan. However, in Moshang, we'll see Avan, but the final verb does not have a vowel nominalizer in it. Instead, it bears agreement marker. So the way it is written and used are different. And then And then when Lungki has avant in the verb phrase, the Moshang has avant. So in this final marking, nominalizers are the same. That they use the same nominalizer. And then the other thing I want to point out is the negations they use here. The last word in the first Lungki example is ni. It's some kind of, it's negating the whole sentence, like it's a statement, positive statement, and then at the end it negates something like, no, it's not true, something like that. And then in Moshang, the prohibitive marking is used in this case. So the way, even though the semantic meaning conveying are all same, but how they use it, it's different. And this is the comparison of song language and spoken language. Here, to be good and night in Lungki and Moshang. The first one is Han. The tone markings, everything is same, except the spoken difference. So the song language has the same entity, and the songs are different. And in night is also the same in song language, but in spoken language there is some difference in the So is the song language protoform? It's a question. We don't know. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I forgot to mention here one point. In the Moshang example, the R in the verb avant and ayong in easy, that one, these R's are silent vowels in the song, but according to the comparison, to make it clear, I added those vowels. So these are the challenges. Yeah, a lot of difficulties. Thank you.
Thank you, Vong. So there's a question from David Detterding in the chat. Shall I read it out, or can you see it? He says, you say that Tangsa Wihu songs are antiphonal. Does that mean they can never be performed by a single person?
Oh, no, I just mentioned there in Lungki, both solo singing and antiphonal. Yeah, it can happen both, but then the way they sing in solo and the way they sing in antiphonal are different. Yeah, so like the antiphonal will be like responsive. One group will like a question they will sing, and then the other group will respond to that question. But with solo singer, it's just all expressing the whole story in a series. Is that it?
Yep. Thank you. I just jump in and say something very briefly here that on the India side, the songs that I have recorded, same song, often with exactly the same words, because one of the versions that Vong was comparing has exactly the same words. They don't sing it antiphonally, they sing all at the same time, starting in different places. So there's a lot of things that we've yet to work out. Are there other people who would like to ask questions of Vong? or make any observations.
Hi, Vong. I was just wondering, like I say, so you're saying the song language is somewhat different from the spoken language. How well do you think that the singers really understand what they're singing? I mean, I suppose you've had to work with them to do your transcriptions and translations of the texts. But do they understand it well, or are they a bit uncertain about the meaning of some of the things they're singing as well?
Yeah, for the song interpretations, it's really difficult to discuss with younger generation. It's only with the older generation I have to work like people who are in their 60s. And about the Longki, I worked with very big group, many older people have been working with me, and they give different answers when I ask certain questions, and then they will discuss in group and come up with the answer. And sometimes I will give them some other alternative answers, and they will keep on discussing and come up with something different. And yeah, like that. So that's why I said it's ambiguous and many different interpretations. Yeah.
Mm.
And here I have one example. Okay. Sorry. Where is it? Sorry. Here I have a rainy season here, Ranyu. Lungki interprets it as a rainy season. And then the Wang Moshang interprets it as a summer here in the midsummer. And then the word here, Sangko Lung, here is a Sangku pen as a fish line. And it's the back of the fish, something like that. So a little bit different differences here and there, yeah, you find it like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's quite a challenge.
yeah.
For two great talks, I have a quick question for Vong. I was just wondering whether you noticed anything in the singing. It's a little different to the grammatical stuff. Whether you noticed anything in the singing about jaw position, the opening of the jaw in singing versus speech, whether you think there are more open vowels or anything in the singing than the speech.
It depends on the person who sings. I think some of the singers from Moshang group, I watch the video and then I hear the pronunciation very clear. Their way of saying the lyrics are very strong. But coming to Lungki group, many of them just follow the lead singer, and even the lead singer doesn't pronounce the words well like that. So yeah, it depends on the singer, I think.
So do you think it depends on the musical style, or it's the different groups have different ways of singing?
The music is all the same, and I think they sing the same way. The only thing is the extra particles they add in the songs are different from group to group, and I haven't discussed that point here. Yeah.
Thank you
And
very
it's
much.
probably
Really
worthwhile
fascinating.
explaining. Oh, sorry. Probably worthwhile explaining where your question comes from. Just that I'll just turn on my video. I think, Andy, I don't want to speak for you, but maybe Vong will understand a little bit better. In the Western singing tradition, we know that, say, operatic singers, they keep their jaw low to radiate and have greater power, great intensity. And we know that that affects their vowel quality. they can't make as distinct vowel qualities, especially the high vowels tend to become lower. So I think that Andy, not wanting to put words in your mouth, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's where his question was coming from.
Yeah, that's right. And even in untrained sort of pop singing, there's a tendency for greater sonority, greater sort of opening of the vocal tract in song, even when you're not trained. So I'm really curious about how universal that is. So this would be a really great set of data to explore questions like that. And even though I realize that's not your research question.
Can I just ask quickly, there is another question from David Deictics, but just ask you, Andy, as a matter of interest, as Vong supervisor and also working on songs, how much of this information could you get from video recordings, and how much would you need to actually be with the speakers to be able to find that out?
Yeah, you could definitely get it from video recordings, but also from the acoustics of the voice itself, particularly because you've got singing and speech. So if you could get a matched set of the same words and then measure the first formant of those two data sets, then you might find that you get higher first formants in the singing than the speech, or you might not. But that would be an interesting research question to ask.
Yeah, that would be a simple way to do it. And if you were doing it from video, ideally, you'd be wanting to paint the lips like blue or something.
The videos are already taken.
So,
yeah, the videos having already been taken, this would be.
And if they've already been taken, then you can do it yourself visually. That's, you know. Yeah.
I don't know how easy it would be to persuade some of the singers to paint their lips, but perhaps we can have a discussion about this amongst a smaller group later. So Vong, can you see David Deictics' question there? I wonder if there are more likely to be open syllables with no final consonants in the singing language.
No final open. I don't think there is like that. Open syllables are more likely to be found in the songs, but the singing use a lot of extra particles not related to the meaning of the lyrics. In the lyrics, I mean, that doesn't carry the meaning at all, just filling up the musical notes. So those are like le, la, something like that. Those are all open vowels. So if that counts, then yeah, there is, I don't know, that answers.
Well, look, it is 10 past. We've had a real feast of two excellent seminars this afternoon. We could go on talking about both of them for quite a lot longer, but I think we should probably stop here. And thank you to both our speakers, Upai Jasa and Vong Tsuh Shi, for your excellent presentations. And we'll be in touch with everybody early in the new year when we have some further information about our next seminars. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Upai, and thank you, Vong.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Yeah, really, really nice. Thank you. Very interesting afternoon. So Vong, you're still there. We shall chat next Monday, yes? Good. All right. So David, Vong. Just a second, I should